Welcome back to my YouTube channel, and tonight I want to share something with you, and it's actually one of my fears of reading out loud. It's always haunted me from such a young age, and I just get really stressed. I worry and I get nervous, and I just can't read out loud in front of anybody. So, let alone me reading out in front of a camera. So, I really want to put myself to the test. How well I do, I don't know, because obviously I can get tongue tied, I can stutter, and I can pause, and I just, I can, I probably could have a meltdown doing it. But I really want to test myself and to show anyone out there that we can face our fears and we can do this. So, anyone out there that's watching this now that's like amazing at reading, don't judge me. So, I really want to do this, and yeah, uh, here we go together, I suppose, and hopefully that you are with me right to the end of the video. I'm gonna be what's the word? As clear as possible. Like I said, I might stutter, I might get tongue tied. Like, I'm panicking now, but I want to do this. So I'm gonna read a chapter. Try and read a chapter, um, one chapter of Harry Potter and the Philosopher Stone, the boy who lived. So I'm now going to read this chapter. So please be patient with me. Right, okay. Deep breath. Mr. and Mrs. Dursley of number 4 Private Drive were proud to say that they were perfectly normal. Thank you very much. They were the last people you'd expect to be involved in anything strange or mysterious, because they just didn't hold with such nonsense. Mr. Dursley was the director of a film called Grunnings, which made drills. He was a big, beefy man with hardly any neck, although he did have a very large moustache. Mr. Dursley was thin and blond and had nearly twice the unusual amount of neck, which came in very useful, as she spent so much of her time craning over garden fences, spying on the neighbours. Mrs. Dursleys had a small son called Dudley, and in their opinion there was no finer boy anywhere. The Dursleys had everything they wanted, but they also had a secret, and their greatest fear was that somebody could discover it. They didn't think they could bear it if anyone found out about the Potters. Mrs. Potter was Mrs. Dursley's sister, but they hadn't met for several years. In fact, Mrs. Dursley pretended she didn't have a sister, because her sister and her good-for-nothing husband were as Dursley-ish as it was possibly to be. The Dursleys shuddered to think that what the neighbours would say if the Potters arrived in the street. The Dursleys knew that the Potters had a small son too, but they had never even seen him. This boy was another good reason for keeping the Potters away. They didn't want Dudley mixing with a child like that. When Mr. and Mrs. Dursley woke up on a dull grey Tuesday, our story starts. Right. There was nothing about the cloudly sky outside to suggest that strange and mysterious things would soon be happening all over the country. Mr. Dursley hummed as he picked out his most boring tie for work, and Mrs. Dursley gossiped away happily as she a, wrestled a screaming Dudley into his high chair. None of them noticed a large twining owl flutter past the window. At 8:30, Mr. Dursley picked up his briefcase, pecked Mrs. Dursley on the cheek, and tried to kiss Dudley goodbye, but missed, because Dudley was now having a tantrum and throwing his cereal at the walls. Right. There's a word here now I don't know how to pronounce it, so I'm going to have to miss that out. I'm really sorry. So I'm just going to have to skip that bit. Dursley, as he left the house. No. I think it's Little Tyke. Little Tyke. Chorlet. I say I don't know it. Little Tyke. Little Tyke. Slit. So I really can't do that. So I'm going to have to skip that, sorry. Dursley, as he left the house. Sorry, I don't know. I know that don't make sense, but I really can't say that word. And it just doesn't make sense. Now I've messed up already. He got into his car and backed out of the number 4's drive. It was on the corner of the street that he noticed the first sign of something peculiar. A cat reading a map for a second. Mr. Dursley didn't realise what he had seen. Then he jerked his head around to look again. There was a tabby cat standing on the corner of the private drive, but there was a map in sight. What could he have been thinking of? It must have been a trick of the light. Mr. Dursley blinked and stared at the cat. It stared back as Mr. Dursley drove around the corner and up the road. He watched the cat in his mirror. It was now reading the sign that said private drive. No looking at the sign, cats couldn't read maps or signs. Mr. Dursley gave himself a little shake and put the cat out of his mind. As he drove toward town. I don't know. As he drove toward town, well, it's towards, there's no S on the end, so as he drove toward town, he thought of nothing except a large order of drills he was hoping to get that day. But on the edge of town, drills were driven out of his mind by something else. As he sat in the unusual morning traffic jam, he couldn't help but noticing that there seemed to be a lot of strangely dressed people about. People in cloaks. Mr. Dursley couldn't bear people who dressed in funny clothes, the get-ups you saw on young people. He supposed this was some stupid new fashion. He drummed his fingers on the steering wheel, and his eyes fell on a huddle of these weirdos standing quite close by. Hold on a minute. I've messed up already. I really thought I could really do this. He drummed his fingers on the steering wheel, and his eyes fell on a huddle of these weirdos standing quite close by. They were whispering exactly together. Mr. Dursley was in a rage to see that a couple of them weren't young at all. Why that man had to be older than he was, and wearing an emerald green cloak. The nerve of him. But then it struck Mr. Dursley that this was probably some silly stunt. These people were obviously collecting for something. Yes, that would be it. The traffic moved on, and a few minutes later, Mr. Dursley arrived in the Grunnings parking lot, his mind back on drills. Mr. Dursley always sat with his back to the window in his office on the 9th floor. If he hadn't, he might have found it harder to concentrate on drills that morning. He didn't see the owls swooping past in broad daylight, though people down in the street they pointed threw people down in the street. Did they pointed and gazed open-mouthed as owl after owl sped. God, I'm really messing up. Oh, God. He didn't see the owls swooping past in broad daylight, though people down in the street. Did they pointed and gazed open-mouthed as owl after owl sped over. No, I've done it again. Sped. Oh yeah, it's right. Sped overhead. Most of them had never seen an owl even at midnight. Mr. Dursley, however, had a perfectly normal owl-free morning. He yelled at 5 different people. He made several important telephone calls and shouted a bit more. He was in a very good mood until lunchtime. When he thought, he stretched his legs and walked across the road to buy himself a bun from the bakery. He'd forgotten all about the people in cloaks until he passed a group of them next to the baker's. He eyed them angrily as he passed. He didn't know why, but they made him uneasy. This bunch were whispering exactly too, and he couldn't see a single collecting tin. It was on his way back past them, clutching a large doughnut in a bag, that he caught a few words of what they were saying. The Potters, that's right. That's what I heard, yes. Their son Harry. Mr. Dursley stopped dead. Fear flooded him. He looked back at the whisperers as if he wanted to say something to them, but thought better of it. He dashed back across the road, hurried up to his office, snapped at his security not to disturb him, seized his telephone, and had almost finished dialing his home number when he changed his mind. He put the receiver back down and stroked his moustache, thinking, no, he was being stupid. Potter wasn't such an unusual name. He was sure there were lots of people called Potter who had a son called Harry, come to think of it. He wasn't even sure his nephew was called Harry. He'd never even seen the boy. It might have been Harvey or Harold. There was no point in worrying Mrs. Dursley. She always gets so upset at any mention of her sister. He didn't blame her if he'd had a sister like that, but all the same, those people in cloaks. He found it a lot harder to concentrate on drills that afternoon, and when he left the building at 5 o'clock, he was still so worried that he walked straight into someone just outside the door. Sorry, he grunted, as the tiny old man stumbled and almost fell. It was a few seconds before Mr. Dursley realised that the man was wearing a violet cloak. He didn't seem at all upset at being almost knocked to the ground. On the contrary, his face split into a wide smile, and he said in a squeaky voice that made passersby stare, Don't be sorry, my dear sir, for nothing could upset me today. Rejoice, for you know who has gone at last. Even muggles like yourself should be celebrating this happy, happy day. Oh, the light's gone off. Alexa, turn the kitchen light on.
Okay.
I think I'm doing okay. And the old man hugged Mr. Dursley around the middle and walked off. Mr. Dursley stood rooted to the spot. He had been hugged by a complete stranger. He also thought he had been called a muggle, whatever that was. He was rattled. He hurried to his car and set off for home, hoping he was imagining things, which he had never hoped before, because he didn't approve of imagination. As he pulled into the driveway of number 4, the first thing he saw, and didn't improve his mood, was the tabby cat he spotted that morning. It was now sitting on his garden wall. He was sure it was the same one. It had the same markings around its eyes. Shoo, said Mr. Dursley loudly. The cat didn't move. It just gave him a stern look. Was this normal cat behaviour? Mr. Dursley wondered. Trying to pull himself together, he let himself into the house. He was still determined not to mention anything to his wife. Mrs. Dursley had a nice normal day. She told him over dinner all about Mrs. about Mrs. Next Door's problems with her daughter and how Dudley had learned a new word, won't. Mrs. Mr. Dursley tried to act normally. When Dudley had been put to bed, he went into the living room in time to catch the last report on the evening news, and finally, bird watchers everywhere had reported that the nation's owls have been behaving very unusual today. Although owls normally hunt at night and are hardly ever seen in daylight, there have been hundreds of sightings of these birds, flying in every direction since sunrise. Experts are unable to explain why the owls have suddenly changed their sleeping pattern. The news The newscaster allowed himself a grin, most mysterious, and now over to Jim McGuffin with the weather going. Oh, and now over to Jim McGuffin with the weather. Going to be any more showers of owls tonight, Jim? Well, Ted, said the weatherman, I don't know about that, but it's not only the owls that have been acting oddly today. Viewers as far apart as Kent, Yorkshire and Dundee have been phoning in to tell me that instead of the rain I promised them yesterday, they have had a downpour of shooting stars. Perhaps people have been celebrating bonfire night early. It's not until next week, folks. But I can promise a wet night tonight. Mr. Dursley sat frozen in his armchair. Shooting stars all over Britain, owls flying by daylight, mysterious people in cloaks all over the place, and a whisper about the Potters. Mrs. Dursley came into the living room, carrying 2 cups of tea. It was no good. He had to say something to her. He cleared his throat nervously. Petunia? I think that's Petunia. Petunia? Petunia, dear, you haven't heard from your sister lately, have you? As he had expected, Mrs. Dursley looked shocked and angry. After all, they normally pretended she didn't have a sister. No, she said sharply. Why? Funny stuff on the news, Mr. Dursley mumbled. Owls shooting stars, and there were a lot of funny-looking people in town today. So, snapped Mrs. Dursley. Well, just thought maybe it was something to do with you. Known her crowd? Mrs. Dursley sipped her tea through pursed lips. Mr. Dursley wondered whether he dared tell her he'd heard the name Potter. He decided he didn't dare. Instead, he said, as occasionally as he could, their son. He'd be about Dudley's age now, wouldn't he? I suppose so, said Mrs. Dursley stiffly. What's his name again? Howard, isn't it? Harry, nasty common name, if you ask me. Oh, yes, said Mr. Dursley, his heart sinking horribly. Yes, I quite agree. He didn't say another word on the subject as they went upstairs to bed while Mrs. Dursley was in the bathroom. Mr. Dursley crept to the bedroom window and peered down into the front garden. The cat was still there. It was staring down Private Drive as though it were waiting for something. Was he imagining things? Could all this have been anything to do with the Potters? If it did, if it got out that they were related to a pair of, well, he didn't think he could bear it. The Dursleys got into bed. Mrs. Dursley fell asleep quickly, but Mr. Dursley lay awake, turning it all over in his mind. His last comforting thought before he fell asleep was that even if the Potters were involved, there was no reason for them to come near him and Mrs. Dursley. The Potters knew very well what he and Petunia thought about them and their kind. He couldn't see how he and Petunia could get mixed up in anything that might be going on. He yawned and turned over. It couldn't affect them. How very wrong he was. Mr. Dursley might have been drifting into an uneasy sleep, but the cat on the wall outside was showing no sign of sleepiness. It was sitting as still as a statue. his eyes fixed unblinkingly on the fair corner of Private Drive. It didn't so much quiver when a car door slammed on the next street, nor when 2 owls swooped overhead. In fact, it was nearly midnight before the cat moved at all. A man appeared on the corner the cat had been watching, appeared so suddenly and silently you had thought he'd just popped out of the ground. The cat's tail twitched and its eyes narrowed. Nothing like this man had ever been seen on Private Drive. He was tall, thin, and very old, judging by the silver of his hair and beard, which were both long enough to tuck into his bed. He was wearing long robes, a purple cloak that swept the ground, and high-heeled buckled boots. His blue eyes were light bright and sparkling behind half moon spectacles, and his nose was very long and crooked, as though it had been broken at least twice. This man's name was Albus Dumbledore. Albus Dumbledore didn't seem to realise that he had just arrived in a street where everything from his name to his boots was unwelcome. He was busy rummaging in his cloak looking for something, but he did seem to realise he was being watched, because he looked up suddenly at the cat, which was still staring at him from the other end of the street. For some reason, the sight of the cat seemed to amuse him. He chuckled and muttered, "I should have known." He found what he was looking for inside his pocket. It seemed to be a silver cigarette lighter. He flicked it open, held it up in the air, and clicked it. The nearest street lamp went out with a little pop. He clicked it again. The next lamp flickered into darkness. 12 times he clicked the put-outer, until the only lights left on the whole streets were 2 tiny pinpricks in the distance, which were the eyes of the cat watching him. If anyone looked out of their window now, even bearded-eyed Mrs. Dursley, they wouldn't be able to see anything that was happening. Down on pavement, Dumbledore slipped the put-outer back inside his cloak and set off down the street toward number 4, where he'd sat down on the wall next to the cat. Did not look at item, but dispute the moment I have spoke to item. Fancy seeing you here, Professor McGonagall. I have turned to smile at the tabby, but item had gone. Instead, was smiling at 2 rather severe-looking women. Quinine was wearing square glasses, exactly the shape of the markings the cat had around its eyes. She too was wearing 2 cloaks, an emerald one. Her black hair was drawn into tight bun. She looked distinctly ruffled. How did you know item was me? She asked. My dear Professor, I go never seen to cat sit SW stiffly. You'd be stiff if you'd be sitting on 2 brick wall all day, said Professor McGonagall. All day, when you could have been entering the day by delivering it, by making a difference. I must have passed 2 dozen feasts and parties on the way here. Professor McGonagall stiffened urgently. Oh, and it is everyone's entering the day by delivering it, by making a difference. All right, she said impatiently. You think they'll be 2 bit more careful, but do not even the Muggles have noticed something going on. Item was on their news. She jerked her head back at Dursley's dark living room window. I heard item. Flocks of owls shooting stars. Well, they're not completely stupid. They were bound to notice something. Shooting stars down in Kent. I'll bet there was dead duggles. I can't do that word. Diggles. Sorry, I can't do that word. Diggle. I have never had much sense. I can't do that. Sorry. You cannot blame them, said Dumbledore gently. We had precious little to celebrate for 11 years. I know that, said Professor McGonagall irritably, but that's do not reason to know our heads. People are being downright careless, out on the streets in broad daylight, not even dressed in muggles' clothes, swapping rumours. She threw to Sharp sideways a glance at Dumbledore. Here, Ace, though hoping was going to tell her something, but did not. SW, she went on, too. Fine thing item would be if, on the look and the day, you know who seems to have disappeared at last. The muggles found out about us all. I suppose I really have gone. Dumbledore. Item. Certainly seems. SW, said Dumbledore. We have much to be thankful for. Would you care for 2 lemon drop? 2Q? 2 lemon drop? They're too kind of Muggle sweet I'm rather fond of. Do not thank you, said Professor McGonagall. Coldly, Ace though she did not think. Esty, again I can't do that word, Esty was the moment for lemon drops. Ace, I say, even if you know who have gone. My dear Professor, surely too sensitive person like yourself, dog call him by his yarm. All S, there's that word again, all S you know who nonsense for 11 years. I've been trying to persuade people to call him by his proper yarn. I'm really sorry on that bit. I don't know the words. Sorry. I'm doing my best. Yeah. So Voldemort, Professor McGonagall flinched, but Dumbledore, Quinny was unsticking 2 lemon drops. Seemed not to notice. Item all gets SW. I don't know what that means, SW. Confusing if we keep saying, you know who. I have never seen any reason to be frightened of saying Voldemort's yarn. It's in yarn, but I want to say name. I know you haven't, said Professor McGonagall, sounding half exasperated, half admiring, but you're different. Everyone knows you're the only one you know. Oh, all right, Voldemort was frightened of. You flatten me, said Dumbledore calmly. Voldemort has powers I will never have. Only because you're too well noble to use them. It's lucky it's dark. I have not blushed SW much since Madame Pomfrey. Again, I think I've done it right. Told me she liked my new earmuffs. Professor McGonagall shot to Sharp. Professor McGonagall shot to Sharp, looked at Dumbledore and said, the owls are nothing next to the rumours that are flying around. You know, Q. It says Q. Everyone's saying about why he's disappeared. About Q finally stopped him. Items seemed that Professor McGonagall had reached the point she was most anxious to discuss. The real reason she had been waiting on to cold, hard wall all day. For neither Ace to cat nor Ace to woman had she fixed. Dumbledore with such 2 piercing stare. Ace she did. Now item was planed. Item was that's not planned. Planed. That whatever everybody was saying, she was not going to believe them. No, she was not going to believe Item until Dumbledore told Item was true. Dumbledore, however, was choosing another lemon drop and did not answer. Q, I think it's Q. They're saying. She pressed on. Is that the last night? Is that last night Voldemort turned up in Godric's Hollow? I have went to find the Potters. The rumour is that Lily and James Potter that they're dead. Dumbledore bowed his head. Professor McGonagall gasped. Lily and James? I cannot believe Item. I did not want to believe Item. Oh, Albus Dumbledore reached out and pat her on the shoulder. I know, I have said overloaded. Professor McGonagall's voice trembled. Ace, she went on, that's not all. They're saying I have tried to kill the Potters. They are Harry. No, they're saying I have tried to kill the Potters. They are Harry. But I could could not kill that little boy. Do not know, no, do not, do not one knows why or how, but they're saying that when I have could not kill Harry Potter, Voldemort's power somehow broke, and that's why he's gone. Dumbledore nodded glumly. It's true. Flattened Professor McGonagall. Disputes all he's done, all the people he's killed. I could, I have, could not kill two little boy. It's just outstanding of all the things to stop him. But how in the yarm of heaven did Harry survive? We dog, we dog only guess, said Dumbledore. We may never know. Professor McGonagall pulled out two lace handkerchief and dabbed at her eyes beneath her spectacles. Dumbledore gave to great stiff ace. To, I have to golden watch, descend his pocket and examined item. Item was to look and odd watch. Item had 12 hands, but do not numbers. Instead of little plants, were moving around the edge. Item must have made sense to Dumbledore, though through because I have put Item back in his pocket and said Hagrid's late. I suppose Item was I have Quinine told you I'd be here, by the way. And it is. Oh my god. Oh, that was difficult, that was. Said Professor McGonagall, and I know suppose you're going to tell me why you're here, of all places. I've eat to bring Harry to his aunt and uncle. They're the only familiar. They're the only familiar. Don't know that word. I have left now. You mean you cannot mean the people Quinine live here, cried Professor McGonagall, jumping to her feet and pointing at number 4. Dumbledore, you cannot. I've been watching them all day. You cannot find two people Quinine at less like us, and they've got that's that word again. Easter. I can't estate. They are. I saw him kicking his mother all the way up the street, screaming for sweets. Harry Potter, eat and live here. It's the best place for him, said Dumbledore firmly. His aunt and uncle will be able to explain everything to him when he is older. I've written them to letter, repeated Professor McGonagall faintly, sitting back down on the wall. Really, Dumbledore, you think you dog explain all, as that word again, Este into letter? Estes, there's so many words I don't know. Those people will never understand him. He will be famous to legend. I will not be surprised if today was known as Harry Potter Day in the future. There will be books written about Harry in the future. There will be books written about Harry. Every child in our world will know his yarn. Exactly, said Dumbledore, look, and Sirius over the top of his half-moon glasses. Item would be enough to turn any boy's head famous. Before I have dog walk and talk, famous for something will not even remember. Expensive, you see how much better off he'll be growing up away. Descend. Is that descend? Descend all that until he's ready to take Item. Professor McGonagall opened her mouth, changed her mind, swallowed, and then said, and it is, you're right, of course, but how is the boy getting here, Dumbledore? She eyed his cloak suddenly. Ace, though she thought might be hiding Harry underneath Item. Hagrid's bringing him. You think item wise to trust Hagrid with something ace important, ace? I would trust Hagrid with my life, said Dumbledore. I'm not saying his heart is not in the right place, said Professor McGonagall grudgingly, but you cannot pretend he's not careless. I have does tend to no, I have does tend to was that. It's those ones that are throwing me off a bit, really. It's like reading it and it's like, oh, it's throwing me off a bit, really sorry. Two low rumbling sound had broken the silence around them. Item grew steadily louder as they looked up and down the street for some sign of 211 headlight. Item swelled to roar ace. They both looked up at the sky and a huge motorcycle fell out of the air and landed on the road in front of them. If the motorcycle was huge, the item was nothing to the man sitting astride item. I have was almost twice ace tall, ace to normal man, and at least 5 times ace wide. I have looked simply too big to be allowed, and SW wide, wild, long, tangles of bushy black hair and beard hid most of his face. I have had hands the size of trash dog lids, and his feet in their leather boots were like baby dolphins. In his vast muscular arms I have was holding company to bundle of blankets. Hagrid, said Dumbledore, sounding relieved. At last. And where did you get that motorcycle? Borrowed item, Professor Dumbledore. Sit, said the giant climbling carefully of the motorcycle. Ace, I have spoken. Young Sirrus, black slow item to me. I've got him, sir. Do not problems where there. Do not, sir. House was almost destroyed, but I got him out all right. Before the muggles start swarming around, I have fell asleep. Ace was flying over Bristol board. Dumbledore and Professor McGonagall bent forward over the bundle of blankets. Inside, just visible, was two baby boy, fast asleep. Under two tufts of jet black hair over his forehead, they could see the circuitous shaped cut, like to bolt of lightning. Is that where? Whispered Professor McGonagall. And it is, said Dumbledore. He'd had that scar forever. Could you not something about item, Dumbledore? Even if I could, I would not. Scar's dog eat in handy. I have one myself above my left knee. That is too perfect map of the London Underground. Well, give him here, Hagrid. We'd better get is that word again? Over with. Dumbledore took Harry in his arms and turned to the Dursleys' house. Could I say goodbye to him, sir? Asked Hagrid. I have bent his great shaggy head over Harry and gave him Q is the word again. Q must have been to look and scratchy. Whiskers kiss. Then suddenly Hagrid let out to howl like two wounded dog. Shh! Hissed Professor McGonagall. You'll wake the muggles. Sorry, sobbed Hagrid, taking out two large spotted handkerchief and burying his face in item. But I can't stand item Lily and James dead and poor little Harry of Tether live with muggles. And it is. It's all look and sad, but get to grip on yourself, Hagrid, or we'll be found. Professor McGonagall whispered, panting. Hagrid, grinning on the arm, Ace Dumbledore stepped over the low garden wall and walked to the front door. I have laid Harry gently on the doorstep, took the letter out of his cloak, tucked item inside Harry's blanket, and then came to the other two. for 2 full minutes. The three of them stood and looked at the little bundle. Hagrid's shoulders shook. Professor McGonagall blinked furiously, and the twinkling light that usually shone dis, dis, Dead. Don't know. Dead. Don't know. Dumbledore's eyes seemed to have gone out. Well, said Dumbledore, finally, that's what. No, that's that. We'll do not business staying here. We may as well go and join the celebrations. Yeah, said Hagrid into look and muffled voice. I'll be taking to Sirius his bike back. To Sirius? I don't know that word. Good G-night. So that's good night. G-night? Good night? Good night? Professor McGonagall. Professor Dumbledore, sir. Wiping his streaming eyes on his jacket sleeve, Hagrid swung himself onto the motorcycle and kicked the engine into life. With Terror item rose into the air and off into the night. I shall see you soon. I expect Professor McGonagall, said Dumbledore, nodding to her. Professor McGonagall blew her. I don't know in reply. Dumbledore turned and walked back down the street. On the corner I have stopped and took out the silver putter outer. I have clicked item 11 and 12 balls of light, lawned back to the street lamps. SW, that private drive, glowed suddenly orange, and I have drive glowed suddenly orange, and I could make out Tabby Cat slinking around the corner at the other end of the street. I could just see the bundle of blankets on the step of number 4. Good luck, Harry. I have murmured. I don't know. I have turned on his heel and with swish of his cloak, was gone. The breeze ruffled the neat hedges of the private drive, which lay silent and tidy under the inky sky, the look and last place you would expect, astonishingly, things to happen. Harry Potter rolled over inside his blankets without waking up. One small hand closed on the letter beside him, and I have slept on, not knowing I was special, not knowing I was famous, not knowing I would be woken in a few hours' time by Mrs. Dursley's scream as she opened the front door to put out the milk bottles, nor that I would spend the next few weeks being prodded and pinched by his cousin Dudley. I could not know that word again. Look and moment. People meeting in secret all over the country were holding company up their glasses and saying in hushed voices to Harry Potter, the boy Quilled lived. Oh my god. Oh my god. I done it. But was it any good? I don't know. That's the first time I've ever done that. Wow. Shaken doing that. But I done it. So I just wanted to just do this video just to say to people that we all have fears and it's okay to face them, and that's what I wanted to do. So if you've got to the end of this video, thank you for giving me your time and patience, and yeah, I hope that wasn't too bad for you. But yeah, in a way I really enjoyed it, but I'm like, oh, because when I read I get really nervous, and I'll put like words there that aren't there sometimes. I'm dyslexic as well, so I have to read that really, really carefully because I have to be so careful because if I'm reading a line without me knowing, I can actually skip down a line or skip down two lines, and I'm like, that don't make sense, and I just realise that I've missed the line and went on the other line, if that makes sense. But yeah, I wasn't good at like English at school and like punctuation and stuff like that, so my grammar wasn't very good and spelling as well. So that was a massive challenge for me because there's words in there. I'm like, oh my god, and like there's like certain phrases like that, and I'm like, oh my god, did I that don't sound right, but I'm actually saying it how it's saying in the book, and I'm like, oh my god, but it's taken me ages to get the phrase out. So when I'm saying it, it's not making probably much sense when you're hearing me say it. And there's some words in there that I just couldn't understand and pronounce as well. So yeah, I've done it. So thank you if you're still watching me now, and yeah, thank you so much. But yeah, I'm glad I've done it, but I am a bit like nervous. Like, oh my god, I've really messed up. Really messed up. So hopefully that wasn't too painful. And yeah, that's Harry Potter chapter 1. So like, if you are a professional talker and reader and you've just watched my video, please don't judge me. Um, yeah, you can comment below, not a problem, but I just don't want like nasty comments because it's always been my fear. I'm dyslexic. I struggle reading, um, and like writing as well, And I just really wanted to challenge myself today, and yeah, that's all. That is all, and it's a completely different video, but I wanted to show people out there that it's okay to face your fear and fears and or whatever, that's sort of, you never thought like you're very good at it, but you want to do it, but you don't, if you know what I mean. um yeah, it's quite, what time is it now? Yeah, it's quite late at night now, and I've been thinking about this all day to do this, and I just couldn't pluck up the courage, and I thought, no, come on, your channel is to help and inspire other people, and you are gonna face your fear. So I've done it. So yeah, completely different video, and you may like it, you may hate it. It's like Marmite, you either love it or you hate it. But I just wanted to challenge myself, and while I'm challenging myself, as I've created my YouTube channel to inspire others, I have filmed it while I've challenged myself. So I'm now obviously gonna watch it back. And yeah, oh god, yeah. So I apologise for any stutters, any words that I couldn't pronounce. If you have got the book in your hand and you were reading it as I was reading it, and you're like, oh god, you said that wrong or said that wrong, I do apologise. But yeah, I'm so glad that I've done it, and if I've inspired other people to do this, you could be exactly the same situation as I'm in. Don't like reading out loud, and you know don't like reading in front of people and stuff like that. You can challenge yourself now. So that's all from me tonight, and thank you for watching. Give me a like if you like this video, and share. And yeah, I'm just so grateful for everyone following me on my channel, supporting me from day one. Thank you so, so much. And thank you to all the new followers that are following me. It's amazing. And yeah, I'm going to say goodnight and I will see you very soon. Take care. Bye.